Hello and welcome to the 12th episode of Ravenloft Fright Nights. My name is Locke, my pronouns are they, he, and I will be your wereraven today. Now, as we fly through the mists together today, I'm not really acting as your guide. I am gonna kind of ask you to not get lost in the sauce as much, but also it'd be kind of hypocritical for me to exactly say that, considering I'm about to expose how lost in the gay sauce that I am because I'm literally just gonna be exposing myself for how normal I am about a certain gay ship within Ravenloft. Now, if you happen to listen to any of the episodes of Dark Lords and Dragons, which was my old podcast that used to be airing, none of this is gonna come as a shock to you about what I'm gonna be going over today. But some of you might be new to the concept, and well, I'm such a chill and fine individual if you didn't know. But yes, what we are going to be discussing today is that Strahdlin is real. I'm not taking any criticisms. I'm not taking any beef from the chat. Strahdlin is real. That's what we're talking about today. I'm going to be giving you all of the rundown from memory, so admittedly I might get a little things wrong, or it might be the way that I've been running things, particularly in regards to the relationship. So there might be some of my own personal bias and homebrew changes, but also this is my theory video. This is my gay ship, and I'm setting sail with it. All right, I'm in there. I almost said pulling the lever. I'm pulling up the anchor. I've been on boats. But just to get us on the same page, for anyone who isn't aware of what Strahdlin is, that is a ship named for Strahd von Zarovich and Azalin Rex. Now, Strahd, he's the most well-known Dark Lord. I've also explained his shtick like 3 or 4 times throughout the course of Ravenloft Fright Nights. If you're on this channel and you're watching this series, you probably already know who he is, but you might not be as familiar with Azalin Rex. So let's talk about him first. So, Azalin Rex comes from the world of Greyhawk. He was a wizard king, ruled with an iron fist, and basically was kind of told that he wasn't allowed to use magic, so then he got really, really into magic, and then, of course, there was the wizard to lich pipeline that he fell down, and it's a real epidemic. It's truly a problem. Make sure you're checking in on your wizard friends, alright? Make sure they're not going a little too far in their pursuit of arcane knowledge. But so in the process, to keep it really brief, he did end up killing his own son and then was trying to bring his son back, and in the process, he was overwhelmed by a bunch of mercenaries who were trying to kill, obviously, this evil Lich King. And he ran into the mist, and when he got to the other side of that creeping fog cloud, he was in Barovia. Now, technically, he called himself Azalin in his homeland, but when he entered Barovia, people started calling him Azalin instead. But as he was going about Barovia when he first came in, he was looking for, arcane tomes and ways to learn new magic of this new world that he just landed in, and he discovered somewhere along the way that he could not actually learn new magics. This was part of his particular Dark Lord curse, shall we call it, even though he wasn't quite his own Dark Lord yet. But it was starting to be established early, because that would be such a just like slap to the face to be a wizard, to be a lich even, and then to not be able to learn anything new, right? But obviously, because he wasn't the kindest person in the world, that garnered the attention of Strahd, and he had to intervene with what Azalin was doing. So this is where Strahd and Azalin's tumultuous, begrudging relationship starts. They basically made a deal. Since Azalin was suffering some sort of malady that wasn't allowing him to learn anything new, he offered to tutor Strahd in the means of magic so that he could learn more things, since Azalin was the more skilled spellcaster, in exchange for Strahd helping him with his experiments that were intended to help break apart the mist so that Azalin could go back to his homeworld. And this collaboration, this relationship, did lead to what I believe was the first breaking open of the mist in Ravenloft history. It led into the two of them ending up in Mordant, in which Strahd was split into two and he had an evil and a good side. I forget what they're called, but it's very reminiscent of like Jekyll and Hyde. I want to say it was called something like The Alchemist and the Creature or whatever. I think that's what some of the house on Griffin Hill from older edition was kind of about. And Azalin was technically there, but I think his only role was to just kind of like watch the two Strahds lose their minds while they were like fighting and having their own like little deal. Hi, editing lock here. Just gonna interrupt for a second. I'm gonna do this a couple times as I realize some things in post. That's so gay. That's so gay. To watch two versions of the same person, just to watch or to intervene. And I mentioned something a little later on that I'm not gonna say here, but gay. And then eventually, I think that fighting between the two halves led to Strahd and Azalin being forced back into Barovia, but also pulled the land of Mordant into Ravenloft, so that's where that domain became like an official thing. Could be wrong about that one. I'm a little foggy on the details, shall we say. But yeah, but obviously that was a failed attempt to get back to Greyhawk, get back to his original kingdom, and Azalin in this failure also really didn't like being under Strahd's thumb. Wanted to be free of it, and the fact that Morden became its own domain told Azalin that there must be other lands in the mist, or other lands could exist in the mist, and that is when he just strolled on out. Didn't care what happened to him, was like, anywhere's better than being here with you, bitch, and left the Barovia. And that's where he emerged into his own realm, which is called Darkon. Okay, so I'm gonna keep Darkon very brief because that's not super relevant to why I think that they're a thing. But Darkon, his rule over it was very militaristic. He had like a secret police called the Kargat, a secret vampiric police that I believe he might have formed in order to get to Strahd. You can see where I'm connecting some dots, right? Before I fully like just lay it out there. But yeah, but it didn't work. Strahd was a better military leader considering his background, and he kind of gave up on trying to take over Barovia by military means. He instead started to focus on the experiments to get out. He was kind of like an absent ruler of Darkon. He didn't really care what happened to his people or anything like that. Like, he wanted full control over them, but he also didn't care enough about like actually being involved in any way, shape, or form. He kind of just left that to the Kargat. He really just wanted to focus on getting out of Ravenloft, out of the Domains of Dread. He's a one-track mind type of dude. So then he orchestrated the Grand Conjunction, which was kind of manipulating a bunch of heroes into going back in time to get some key items that like helped form Ravenloft or something like that. And it did break apart the mist what happened here. And so many Dark Lords and other evil entities got out, but you know who didn't? You know who didn't? Azalin Rex and Strahd von Zarevich, because Azalin's pride or what have you drove him to go back to Strahd's doorstep so they could duke it out, and then they lost their opportunity because I think the heroes fixed what they did. They went back and like put the things back, so then the mist closed up, so anything that didn't get out stayed stuck, sort of thing. So, I don't know. I think that's pretty petty X shit to prioritize going to go fight with someone over actually escaping and achieving the goal that you've had for years, centuries, who knows how long. But yeah, so he definitely did that. And there was a few other times where I think there was like one or two more times that he technically successfully broke open the mist, or attempted to, and came very close to succeeding in doing so, and then failed to actually commit to leaving. And a big part of Darkon that is important to keep in mind with some of what I'm going to say is it really messes with your memories. It takes your memories and gives you false ones, rewrites memories that were already established, and they all get kind of put into a book, and you don't really know what's real unless you like read the book, sort of thing, is what I understand. So there is some questionable stuff about Azalin's memory as well, because he would be subject to this issue within Darkon as well. So, are you seeing the patterns? Are you seeing what I'm laying down? Okay, so first, we don't know the exact nature of their tumultuous relationship. They could have had this begrudging respect as they were working together for similar goals, right? Similar goals. They both had respect that they didn't want to admit that they had for each other. So, can we talk about emotional constipation here? Emotional constipation. So, that's already laying down the groundwork there of not wanting to potentially admit any feelings and the tension that there could have been, the respect that didn't want to be given because they don't want to admit that the other is better than the other, sort of thing. And who knows what really happened during that time? Because Azalin doesn't remember. And if you think Strahd's gonna admit it, you got another thing coming. You got another thing coming. That man's got so many fucking issues, dude. And Azalin doesn't truly remember. But he remembers having extremely strong feelings about Strahd von Zarevich. Right? Right? And isn't it odd how sometimes when you're trying to navigate feelings about someone, sometimes it's really hard to like discern the difference between actually not liking someone and having like a crush on them. Like that's a real thing people struggle with, of just like not realizing that the anger and the annoyance that they have for someone isn't actually anger and annoyance. It's, hey, I want to smash my face against your face. Okay, yeah, so we have that, right? We have that. But then we have a traumatic moment. We have a traumatic moment in the Mordant failure, where Azalin was there and he witnessed what Strahd was going through. He was there to technically witness and try to help with the pieces, we could say. Pick up the pieces afterwards once they were flung back into Barovia. He was there. And who is to say that that wasn't the breaking point in, like, things are happening between us that we aren't talking about. We need to talk about it. We're not going to talk about it. So we're going to destroy whatever it is we got going on here. And we're going to say that we're nemesises. Especially because, you know, two men with power duking it out for who's the better one. The egos at war here truly contributed to where, like I said, Azalin ends up just walking into the mist, hoping for the best because he doesn't want to be under Strahd's rule anymore. He wants to have his own say in how things are done. So then we get into further memory issues because once he got into Darkon, there's also a lot of conjecture about, like, did he also technically split into two the way that Strahd did with, like, the alchemist and the creature in Mordant? I am nothing if not a man who enjoys tragic gay parallels. Because there was Darkulus Rex in the castle, but then there was Firin Zalhonen that was a bit more of like a hero, and they had to like fight each other before like they recombined, and he remembered, and it was like this big tragic thing because he lost the opportunity to be young and youthful again, and have the ability to learn new magic and whatnot by doing this, but it was inevitable because when they were split, they didn't know. But also there is again the memory thing of Darkon, where your memories get plucked and changed and all of that. So Azalin possibly doesn't really know what's going on, doesn't really know what his past is about, right? There's a lot of memory pockets you can play with. So, argument for he starts forming the Hargat to try to take Barovia through military means. Baby Girl just wanted to get back with his love and didn't know that's what he was doing. He wanted attention from Strahd and didn't know how else to get it. Which is like, I feel such strong things for you. I think I want to take over your land. But maybe it was just an attention grab and he just didn't realize what it was because of the misplaced memories, misplaced feelings, emotional constipation of it all. Yeah, you guys know that classic move of mixing up romantic feelings and declaration of war. Pretty sure it's happened to all of us. And then, of course, I'm not going to go over this point too much because I kind of did it while I was explaining the history of stuff. But the Grand Conjunction, when instead of escaping, Azalin went back to go fight Strahd like a petty ex would go do, instead of actually achieving the goal. The goal that was so hard to do, and he was so smart at manipulating people. Like, he didn't technically really do any of the work, but it was so easily undone because he went to go have an argument with his ex rather than actually leave. And there's nothing more gay than that. There's nothing more gay than that. You know how small town gays, they've all dated each other. or like you're like friends with your ex because there's very few queer people around, sort of thing. It's giving that. It's giving that. It's literally like still being so obsessed with each other because you don't know a lot of other queer people, or there's a lot of things that never got resolved because of the grander issues of the world at large, sort of thing, if that makes sense. Alright, and then my last point is technically from 5th edition in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. I was saving it towards the end because I wanted to put a spoiler warning for anyone who's playing 5th edition. Obviously, someone can take a lot of inspiration from previous edition lore for Azalin Rex if these included in a Ravenloft campaign, but this is directly what is like canon in 5e, so if you don't want to hear it, I'll put a little timestamp here for you to skip to before I start actually talking about it. So in 5th edition in Darkon, Azalin is gone. Darkon is a failing domain because it doesn't have a Dark Lord, right? And through some clues that you can look through in that source book, if you aren't aware of previous edition lore, you can technically put the puzzle pieces together, but it's easier if you kind of already knew who Azalin is, because there is a Mist Wanderer called Firenzelhonen who is Azalin Rex. He escaped in some sort of big explosion or experiment, or I think there's a lot of different ways that you can go with it, and they have suggestions in VR's guide. But then there's is it called Mother's Tear or the King's Tear hanging in the sky, and Azalin's nowhere to be seen. And now there's this Miss Wanderer who you could argue doesn't remember who he is, or is pretending to not know who he is, or is going a little crazy. If you want to go conspiracy theorist about it, the way that I kind of like to play him, in which he is so convinced of the true realities beyond, and we're all just in a dream, in his dream, in fact. And everyone he meets is just like reflections of his subconscious, like deep seeds of himself. And this is important because he still remembers that he deeply, deeply hates Strahd von Zarovich. He's got this weird feeling about that man, doesn't like going to Barovia, doesn't want Strahd to know that he's around, is, being avoidant. And that sounds also very like messy breakup behavior of like when you still have to see your ex, like if it was like a workplace romance, or again, I guess I'm gonna use small town because I grew up in a small town where this was a thing. You still have to see them around because there's not that many places that people go, sort of thing. Trying to avoid, but because like maybe he doesn't remember, memory issues again. He doesn't truly know why he doesn't want to be near Strahd. He just knows that he thinks he's rude and narcissistic and selfish and better than everyone. And ooh. And I think this would also explain why Strahd would likely also drop everything to go for Azalin Rex, no matter what else he's got going on, unless like obviously reincarnation of Tatiana's in the picture. Then maybe not. But also there's a bunch of things that he'll drop and like focus on for a little bit of time if certain things happen throughout Curse of Strahd. So I would also argue that if Azalin Rex is around, probably him too. So, as you can see, there's so much gay tension between those two. It just doesn't make sense if there wasn't some sort of weird relationship, a weird, toxic, possessive, get away from me, I love you, but I'm not going to say those words relationship. It just doesn't make sense. So, Strahdlin, real, end of story. That's where we're at. That's happening. Would their relationship ever work? Absolutely not. The only reason why Strahd has as many like consorts and brides and lovers that he does is because he can keep them under his thumb. As soon as someone is beyond his ability to keep in check and keep beneath him power-wise, it's never gonna work. And Azalin checks off all those boxes of he is more powerful, he is more intelligent, he has more access to arcane power even though he can't learn more, he's more skilled with it, he has a grander field of knowledge already, and he doesn't want to be controlled. He wants to be the one in control. So their relationship will never work, but will always add a little bit of spice to your campaign storyline. But yeah, I think that's going I think that's going to do it for this episode of Ravenloft Fright Nights. I don't have anything else to say other than if you don't believe in Strahdlin, I don't believe in you. You don't exist. You don't exist. Let me know what you think. If there's anything in the lore that I missed that could feed into this crack ship of mine, please let me know. There's some stuff about Azalin that I'm still not as privy to, but I just think there's too many signs for it to not be true. I also technically haven't read any of the Ravenloft books that he is a character in yet, but I'm very excited to get into that soon, and you can see them in the background that they're just waiting for me to read through them. I'm sorry I stuttered there because there's a cat yelling in the background trying to break into my room again, dude. My god. But yeah, I'm curious what you guys think about Strahdlin. If there's any other crack ships that you have throughout Ravenloft, please let me know. I'm only looking for the toxic gay shit. That's all I'm looking for. If you have something that's hetero, I'll accept it. But I'm looking for the toxic gay shit. Because that is just absolutely rampant between Strahd and Azalin. And part of why I like it so much. So, thank you for joining me for this 12th episode of Ravenloft Fright Nights. If you haven't already, you should hit that subscribe button and hit the like button while you're down there as well, because we are about to hit the finale of Ravenloft Fright Nights literally tomorrow. Tomorrow's Halloween, which means the final episode will be out, and this little daily upload thing that I totally put together way too much, too last minute, will come to a conclusion. So you want to make sure you see that. You really do, as well as check out any of the other videos that I've done. That would be so chill and fun of you. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys next time.